Sunday painter.
I want to introduce you to an artist you may have not heard of, Charles Warren Eaton, and also what is tonalism, what I call a hazy mood in a painting. In these short videos, we would take a quick look at an artist just to pique your curiosity to learn about a new artist and a way of seeing. For more art information like this, subscribe and hit the little bell so you know when I post a new art-related video. So who is Charles Warren Eaton and how learning about his art may change how you do yours? Eaton was born in Albany, New York to a family of limited means. He started working at age 9, and worked at a dry goods store in Albany into his early adulthood. When Eaton was 22, a friend's amateur painting sparked his interest in art. He moved to New York City in 1879 to work during the day and attend classes at the National Academy of Design and the Art Students League at night. He also used his time off to practice sketching. Eaton's entrance into the art world coincided with a profound change in the prevailing artistic style in America. In the late 1870s, the highly realistic and detailed Hudson River School manner, which had dominated the American art scene for over 40 years, was giving way to a much looser, moodier style that younger artists were bringing home from Europe. This new style, which would later come to be known as tonalism, emphasized low-key colors and tended to depict intimate settings rather than scenes of grandeur. Eaton adopted this new style in New York and became friends with two other tonalist artists, Leonard Oakman and Ben Foster. Eaton worked primarily in oil and watercolor. He was a founding member of the American Watercolor Society. He exhibited at the well-known Macbeth Gallery in New York for over 30 years, in Paris via the famous dealer Paul Durand-Ruel, and at important international expositions. By the early 1880s, Eaton began to earn professional recognition along with his first sales. He exhibited his first two paintings at the National Academy of Design in 1882, and continued to exhibit there regularly for the rest of his career. He held the work of Robert Swain Gifford in particularly high regard, as well as that of George Inness. Eaton and Inness worked in the same building in New York in 1889, and Inness stopped to admire Eaton's landscapes outside his studio. He called on Eaton the next day and purchased a painting, and the two became friends. Eaton, however, who had already established himself as a successful artist, was more of an admirer of Inness than a follower. I will have videos later of Gifford and Inness. Eaton reached his maturity as an artist in the 1890s and 1900s with two distinctive landscape subjects. The first subject, tonalist in style, was a landscape typically containing pasture, trees and sometimes a small patch of water or stone fence. The overall mood in these paintings is one of intimacy. The second subject, more stately in manner, was a landscape with a grouping of tall pine trees, often backlit with the glow of a setting sun. He developed this second subject into some of his largest works, and was so successful with them he became known as the pine tree painter. Eaton almost never included human or animal figures in his landscapes. Despite his success with tonalism, Eaton gradually discarded the shadowy tonalist style and began painting with brighter colors, especially after 1910. Never a true impressionist, Eaton painted in a loosely realist style. Many works from his later career depicted European scenes, where Eaton traveled regularly as an adult. He particularly favored the countryside around Bruges as well as Lake Como in Italy, which he painted with a particularly bright palette. So what is tonalism? Art historians use the term tonalism to describe an American artistic movement spanning from about 1880 to approximately 1920. More generally, the term is described as a style of painting in which color range is limited so that subtle gradations of the middle values constitute the primary aesthetic and means of expression. Historical tonalism, rooted in the French Barbizon style, emphasized mood, feeling, evocation and suggestion. It seemed to its early practitioners closely related to musical composition as in Whistler's paintings. Between 1880 and 1915, dark, neutral hues such as gray, brown or blue, often dominated compositions by artists associated with the style. This movement, which emphasized atmosphere and shadow and harmonized nature with man, all this was done on location directly from nature. The tonalists did not like to be defined by any particular art movement. But, when pressed on this issue, the early tonalists most often used the term luminism to refer to their approach toward painting. How can you use tonalism in your work? Take these points into consideration. Tonalist paintings tend to have the following defining characteristics: a moody and dramatic atmosphere. Loose and visible brushwork. A lack of detail or fine rendering, particularly in the darks. Muted colors, dull yellows, greens, oranges, browns and grays. A strong contrast between light and dark, or saturated and dull, usually to bring attention to the light source in the painting. A lack of any underlying meaning or storytelling. A strong focus on nature. Back to Eaton. He was a reclusive bachelor. Eaton maintained a studio in New York City, although he lived in Bloomfield, New Jersey. He painted many snow scenes in white and gray-purple tones, but by 1900 was focusing more on the theme of the Berkshire pine forests of New York State. His intimate, moody landscapes were known for subdued golden-brown hues and muted tonal harmonies, and the subject was often the landscape in late autumn, evening time, or winter. These paintings were groundbreaking because they were relatively small in scale and intimate countryside views, which was a departure from the generally popular panoramic, romanticized paintings, which I also love. By the 1920s, Eaton's output and creativity had faded. The Great Depression demolished the art market, and Eaton's sales dried up. He moved to Bloomfield, and lived a quiet retirement with his sister and niece before his death in 1937. He was buried in Bloomfield Cemetery. His works, like many artists of his generation, were nearly forgotten for decades until a resurgence of interest in the late 20th century. Hope you enjoyed this short documentary. There is always more to Eaton, and I hope this sparks your curiosity. For more art video and related art subjects, subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget the Distressed Artist Tees. The link is in the description below. Please leave a positive comment. Have a great day and thanks for watching.